there seems to be the euphoria of, all this impetus, and it's not just at a federal level, but several of the states as well. Now we're in kind of that no man's land of waiting for the rules and waiting for the ability to deploy under that infrastructure bill.
Hi, and welcome to Behind the Wall. I'm your host, Joanna Macris at Investor Place. And today we're back taking a deep dive into Biden's infrastructure bill and the implications for bus and commercial fleet electrification. Joining us today is Fraser Atkinson, CEO of Green Power Motor Company, which makes electric zero emissions vehicles for the cargo, delivery, and school sectors. Hi, Fraser, welcome.
Good morning. How are you today?
We're great. Good morning. So let's dive in. You know quite a bit about the infrastructure bill. A lot of investors are feeling more optimistic about investment in the EV sector now. How do you think this bill will really stimulate more investment and adoption in the EV sector?
Well, today being as we approach the middle of January 2022, it's actually the what I call the EV OEM startups, which GP is clearly part of that group or ecosystem, have been under a lot of selling pressure in the capital markets. And I think that's because of the uncertainty of the extent of future bills and what exactly the rules are with the existing bill. And what I mean by that is that the infrastructure bill that has been signed has specifically allocated $5 billion for the electrification or zero emission school buses and including some transit. And that provides a huge impetus for a handful of companies that produce products for that sector. But here we are waiting for the rules. So there seems to be the euphoria of all this impetus, and it's not just at a federal level, but several of the states as well. Now we're in kind of that no man's land of waiting for the rules and waiting for the ability to deploy under that infrastructure bill.
Right. So what are your thoughts in terms of next steps and catalysts? Like what are you looking for as a company in the space?
Well, we see a lot of state initiatives being drivers probably a lot faster than the federal because they're already set up. They've already have programs in place, and they're coming to the table with their own programs. And for example, California just announced in their funding plan for the current calendar year or for their current operating year, in that their plan, which will be reviewed with their first public session this coming Thursday, which gives you an idea of how current it is. And that program allows for or provides for 1,000 all-electric school buses and 1,000 all-electric transit buses over 3 years. And they're allocating $400 million over the 3 years for school buses and over $200 million for the transit buses. So this is already being proposed. We know what the rules are. We are going through a period of engagement, and we would expect that they will be live sometime the end of February or early March. And that's not too far away. So whereas the federal, it's more money than what California is putting forward, but probably somewhat equal on a per capita basis. It'll be a little longer to once the rules are published in terms of the timing and deployment in the marketplace. But we would see that is probably going to have an impact starting this summer.
Okay. And how does that, does that take place via a traditional RFP process, or how does that selection and evaluation process take place at the state level?
Well, in the case of California and similar to what the New York voucher program, the NYSERDA, and the New Jersey, which is probably one of the most generous programs out there right now. In all cases, it's a matter of as a OEM, you need to have your products listed as eligible vehicles, and as buyers, you either need to buy direct or through dealers. And so there's an approved dealer network that needs to be on the list. And so if you have all of those ingredients for a potential fleet operator, that can buy through a dealer or in some cases buy direct from companies like ourselves, then it's a known amount for the vouchers that are available for each vehicle. So in some respects, it provides for a much faster go-to-market strategy because you don't need to do the RFP or RFQ process.
Mm. I mean, so we're hitting on the bus sector. If I have this right, less than 1% of buses right now are electric. Is that right? And how does this transition begin to accelerate?
Well, we're probably for in the case of school buses, I would estimate that there's somewhere around 500 all electric school buses. That's 0.1 of 1%.
Mm.
So there's 500,000 in operation today across the nation. And, as I say, there's maybe 500 tops of 1,000. So a state like California coming forward and saying, we want 1,000 of these, starts to have a material impact in terms of creating momentum and creating the dynamics with the OEMs to increase production to
Mm.
meet that kind of cadence.
Right. I also wanted to talk a little bit about commercial fleets, which are expected to be a big beneficiary of the Biden bill. We've already seen a lot of the really big technology and logistics companies like Amazon, FedEx, UPS, all making announcements about their move toward electrification. Your company announced a deal with TCI Trucks recently. So talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing in the fleet and logistics space and why companies are motivated to make this transition.
Well, right now our hottest seller is a 22-foot all-electric cargo van. So it's right in the heart of, and it's not intended for the last mile delivery, which tends to be, require limited payload. You'd probably be surprised, but the average FedEx truck only drives 75 to 80 miles a day. That's it. So it's not one of these vehicles that needs 300 miles in a day to operate its duty cycle. It's fairly, it isn't a high requirement in terms of the battery capacity in order to operate that vehicle, and likewise the payload. We operate in the mid-mile. We're looking at the logistics vehicles that need to operate 12, 14, 16 hours a day and need to have a payload of, several metric tons. And so our 22-foot all-electric cargo van accomplishes that, and we are completely sold out right now. And while we haven't announced any of our results on New Jersey, we're already on there. We were advised independently that we have more than any other OEM in terms of the approved vouchers on New Jersey, and most of those are their 22-foot cargo van.
Oh,
So we're just
fantastic.
simply, as soon as they're off the production line and we get them homologated for that particular customer, deliver and on to the next level of production.
Mm. One, as you know, as an early stage EV manufacturer, one of the biggest challenges really is scaling manufacturing. And one of the interesting things I've seen about your company is that you've shifted from a strictly build to order business model to building an inventory of vehicles that can then be finished, according to customer requirements. So tell us a little bit more about that and how that helps the company prepare really for revenue and acceleration.
Well, that's a really good summary because when we did our NASDAQ uplisting in August 2020, so almost a year and a half ago, that gave us the capital to move from production pursuant to customer orders to where we could produce certain lines of product. There's some products like a 40-foot low floor transit. That's a custom build. You need to have the engineered drawings and everything else completed and agreed upon with that customer before you start building that kind of product. But for our 40-foot school bus and our various models on our EV Star platform, we can build to up to a point in inventory. So we can't do all the finishing work, but we can build to the shell. So we've been very actively building out a number of our models on the EV Star, being our cab and chassis, and some of the passenger vehicles, as well as we had started a process of building 5 of our 40-foot Type D school bus. We call that the Beast, the battery electric automated school transportation vehicle. And then we doubled it at the beginning of January 2021. So a year ago, we we upped it to 10 of those a month, and they take almost a year to build from the start through to the ability to be able to deliver to customers. Now we're reassessing that model and saying, well, how do we scale? Instead of incrementally growing at 5 to 10 to 15, that's interesting, but isn't going to meet the appetite of the marketplace, as I was describing with all of that funding that's coming in.
Right.
So we're now looking at a strategy of how we can have specific facilities dedicated to a sector such as the school sector that can really ramp up our ability to produce product. And then on your question on the supply chain, that's something that's affecting the automotive sector globally. Doesn't matter whether you're in the EV sector or internal combustion engine producer. And I saw an interesting comment from the CEO of Blue Bird, and they produce the largest number, or the biggest volume of traditional school buses than any other producer in the nation. And he was saying that they have over 2,000 vehicles that are waiting for more than 25 parts. That's a lot. That's a huge impact in terms of your supply chain. Now, in our sector, we don't have as many parts on our vehicle. You've got the batteries, if you have the traction motor, if you have certain key aspects of the electronics that are required to build your vehicle, there's fewer underlying parts to build our product compared to a traditional ICE vehicle. And an engine, for example, is 2,200 parts. We have no engine. Mm-hmm. So in what we had started, once again, going back to our NASDAQ uplisting, is that Brendan Riley, our president, and our procurement team really got focused on nailing down our supply chain. And so he's been working on that for a year and a half in terms of forward looking on hoarding certain parts that he thought would have shortcomings and would have certain aspects of our build. We've got redundancy on all of our batteries, our high voltage systems, and then our TM4 traction motor that we use both on the EV Star and as well with our Beast school bus. We met with the folks that produce that product. It's owned by Dana Automotive. They actually produce it in China. We met with them earlier, or last fall, I should say, and they assured us that they have actually some excess capacity, and they viewed us as a very, very strong customer. So they said, just keep us in the know in terms of what you expect over the next couple years, and you can expect that we'll deliver on time. So we've done our best, but having said that, we're still seeing, there's shipping delays, there's supply chain delays, and there's even energy delays with some of our contract manufacturers in Asia, where they have to shutter their operation for 2, 3, 4 weeks because of various issues that they're contending with.
Right. I did want to touch on a little bit about your manufacturing, and the majority of which is outsourced to China and Asia. And what do you say to investors that are concerned about, the increasing tensions between the countries, tariff wars, costs, and even the fact that China dominates so much of the EV supply chain?
Well, that was we were entirely beholden to, and when you say it's not just China, but it's really that whole corridor in Asia. We're all the way down to Singapore. We've got some key contract manufacturers. We have been able to diversify. All of our final assembly is done in Southern California. And more recently, we have been able to secure, this going back almost a year ago, when we were able to secure our first Buy America compliant deal. And that was on the heels of getting Buy America compliance on our EV Star passenger vehicle. So we're now in a position that we can build entirely onshore with a Buy America compliant vehicle and not be beholden to an Asian contract manufacturer. So we've certainly mitigated. We haven't completely eliminated it yet, but the flip side is that having a manufacturing light approach has given us the ability to build out the extent of product catalog that we enjoy today.
Right. So, touching on that manufacturing light approach, a big, kind of umbrella issue around investors investing in the EV space is kind of the large operating losses that we're seeing in all of these companies, which are early stages in ramping their manufacturing and production. So, talk to us a little bit about how you see the operating model growing. You've talked about a 30% gross margin level, your path towards profitability and how you get there.
And we're very proud of the fact that we have built a business model that has a path to profitability. There's of the OEM EVs that constitute the startups or the early stage companies that wouldn't include a Tesla and others, is that there's only one other that has a positive gross profit, and it's 4%. So we've tracked at 30% when we talk about deals internally with our sales group. It's 30%, as our blended target. The school buses are less than that because of a number of dynamics in the marketplace and the fact that product isn't used as much as the others. So we've got a different sort of total cost of ownership in that space than other ones. But our view is that we maintain it close to the 30, or where larger deals where we get the gross profit dollars that get us to that sort of a positive cash flow profitable business model. The combination of the two is what we had envisioned as we had developed out over the past number of years. And so where we are today is that with our cash costs, if with even a 28 to 30% GP, we need sales of less than $10 million in a quarter, and we're break even / positive cash flow. And that's, when you look at our overall sector and the kind of revenue numbers that are attainable with the funding that's coming in, 10 million a quarter isn't a big number on a relative basis.
Right. Makes sense. So,
and going back to that manufacturing light, the one thing we always like to point out is that I'm not sure what device you have. I do have an Apple for my smartphone, and that was manufactured in Shenzhen. And I've been to the Foxconn facility. Nobody ever talks about Apple having issues with their Chinese manufacturing and things like that, because they supply they manage their supply chain. They're on the floor managing the manufacturing process. And they proudly define their role as, this was designed in Cupertino, California, not manufactured in California or even the States. That's where it's designed. So we've taken a number of lessons from their playbook in terms of how they've managed that manufacturing process. And we think that's, to date has been a really sound model for us in terms of, getting to the stage we're at. But going back to my earlier comment, we're now at a point where we need to redefine a manufacturing strategy that can really upscale what we've been doing.
Right. EV valuations have been running red hot. As you know, to me, this seems like an interesting small cap way to play the electrification theme. For investors looking at this stock, what are some of the next milestones and kind of catalysts that could be happening over the next, couple of months?
Well, for us, I think the thing to watch is how we're going to accomplish a larger manufacturing profile. We don't think it's a sales or marketing issue for, as I mentioned, our cargo van's totally sold out, and we need to produce a lot more school buses than the rate that we're producing right now, given the impetus that's coming into the marketplace. So I think for us, that's a big part of it. And I think from an industry point of view, in terms of those companies that had early successes in the capital markets, the key is, well, what's behind it in terms of what they're bringing to market. I mean, we've been delivering products for over 5 years, and for some of the companies that are just coming into the marketplace, they're still sorting out prototypes. They're still figuring out how they're going to produce. It's not easy. This isn't, for the legacy companies that produced ICE vehicles, they just can't take their manufacturing facility and turn it into an EV manufacturer overnight. And I think you're seeing that with a lot of these traditional manufacturers in terms of the struggles they're having in bringing EV products to market. So I think those are a number of the dynamics to see or to watch, as well as those companies that are really defining a business model that can make money.
Yeah, makes sense. And I mean, lastly, what do you think? Is there anything investors are missing in this space when they think about the EV sector? Particularly given, I mean, the sell-off has been kind of interesting in the space. You could say a lot of it's macro driven, but what would you say is kind of a misperception or misunderstanding in this space?
Well, I think there's probably a couple, and I'll go back to your question on the supply chain or the discussion on that part, is that we're seeing huge increases in the materials. You look at lithium and in terms of the base lithium, I mean it's increased multiple times over the past year. So we're not talking a 10 to 20%. We're talking a wholesale change in that commodity price. So that doesn't lead to continued decline in battery prices. And so I think there's a need to be as efficient as you can in terms of accomplishing payload and duty and in terms of range. We've with our purpose-built product, that allows us to maximize both of those. But I think some companies that do a lot of retrofit and refurbs that aren't as efficient in their use of the underlying batteries, to have batteries simply stay even in terms of pricing, let alone the costing potentially going up. BYD, for example, has announced price increases in their batteries on an equivalency of energy density. So I think that's going to be a little bit of a surprise to the marketplace. We believe we're ahead of that in terms of how we've planned out our product builds and the utilization of the batteries within our products. And I think the other thing is that these super big numbers that people announce, going back to sort of the marketing and the capital markets and everything, is everybody had expectation that, well, if you announced an order, then you had this sort of revenue potential. Well, you still need to build the product, and you still need to build a product that works. So I go back to who's delivering product in the marketplace. There are a handful of companies, and we compete with some, we work with others, and it's a much smaller universe of those companies that are really in the business delivering product that customers love.
Makes sense. Thank you so much, Fraser. We'll keep watching the company story and we'll revisit you shortly. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. Well, I really appreciate your time. This is going to be edited and it should run next week, and there'll be like a brief written write-up, and yeah, it'll be exciting. I think it's an interesting story, and the timing is good.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you like to integrate pictures or anything like that, but we recently delivered to Thermalito 6 of our BEAST school buses. That was delivered at the end of December. And then Andrew, their head of procurement, he actually came down to check out the vehicles before we delivered them. I mean, I think he was a little bit nervous that, geez, this is a big deal for us. We want to make sure they're in good shape. He was just thrilled. I mean, we were able to get a quote from him that we included in our press release last week when we, talked about that delivery. But it, really speaks to, the quality of the vehicles that we brought to market. I mean, I was on that in December, actually one of their vehicles in middle of December when I was down in our factory, and I was out doing a quick test drive, with the team, as they were checking out some of the telematics on the vehicle, and I was sitting in the back, and normally you bounce along,
Mm-hmm.
and we were going over these potholes and everything else, and it was like driving in a sedan.
Awesome.
I was just sitting there like a kid going, this is phenomenal. Like when the market sees how good this is.
Good. All right. I might reach out to Ali for some more like screenshots or some kind of complimentary materials for the piece.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your
Okay,
time.
then. All the
Insightful.
best. Bye-bye.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for watching Behind the Wall. Please like, subscribe, and comment. And check out our website, investorplace.com, for early access to videos and an even more in-depth look.